the ear. This is the external portion of the ear. This top part, which if you were to touch the top part of your ear, it's very cartilaginous. This is the auricle, whereas down here, the fleshy part, this is what a lot of people will get pierced. This is the lobule. Together, the auricle and the lobule create a funnel, and the function is literally a funnel. It helps funnel and collect and funnel sound waves into this canal right here, which is the external acoustic meatus. So if you remember, this is a structure you had to learn on the skull, on the temporal bone. So surrounding these structures, this is all part of the temporal bone. So the auricle and lobule create a funnel, collects and funnels sound waves into the external acoustic meatus, also called the external auditory meatus. Either one of those would count. So the sound waves are going to come in, and they are actually going to hit on this structure right here that looks like a drum head, and this is your tympanic membrane. So tympanic, like a timpani, a drum head. It's exactly what it looks like. So this is the tympanic membrane. When the sound waves hit this tympanic membrane, it's going to cause vibrations. Those vibrations are then going to be transferred from the tympanic membrane to the ossicles. And so remember, ossicles, these are the smallest bones of your body, and their function is to conduct those vibrations to the inner ear, as well as to amplify those vibrations, okay? So there are 3 ossicles. This one right here looks like a mallet or a hammer, right? This is the malleus. So the malleus. This one right here, which is, and I'm talking about them in order. So when the tympanic membrane vibrates, it's going to first vibrate the malleus, okay? Then it's going to vibrate the incus, okay, which looks like an anvil. So malleus, then the incus, and then the stapes right here. Okay, it looks like a stirrup, right? If you've ever been horseback riding. So this is the stapes. So that's the 3rd ossicle, and when the stapes vibrates, it's going to plunge into the oval window, which is the structure of the inner ear complex that it's attached to. So around here would be the oval window. So the stapes acts like a piston and will actually, as it vibrates, plunge into the oval window and will start moving the fluid inside of this complex. Okay? And that fluid will eventually cause the deflection of hair cells, which will send impulses to the brain for you to be able to hear. So stapes plunges into that oval window, moves the inner fluid, and then right here, this structure that looks like a snail shell, right? This is the cochlea. And if I take this apart, you can see that it's wound together, right? Wound around. So it looks like a little snail shell. And inside of the cochlea, you're going to find the organ of Corti, which the organ of Corti is where you find the hair cells, which when that inner fluid, there's a lot more details to it, but the inner fluid will move, causing the hair cells to deflect, and will then you'll have action potentials that get sent along this branch of the vestibular cochlear nerve, which is the cochlear branch, because it's coming from the cochlea. So when you think cochlea, you think the organ of hearing, right? So this is where the hair receptors are located that deal with hearing. Cochlea, action potential sent along the cochlear branch of the vestibular cochlear nerve. Okay? That will eventually go to the temporal lobe, which is where you have your primary auditory and your auditory association functional areas. Here, this chunky part that the semicircular canals are attached to, this is the vestibule, okay? So this is the vestibule, and these are the 3 semicircular canals. When you think vestibule and semicircular canals, you want to think organs of equilibrium and balance. The vestibule contains that utricle and saccule, which are going to be involved in collecting information and sending it to the brain. This information is going to be dealing with position, head position when you're not moving, as well as linear acceleration, so linear movements. All of that so your body in response to gravity, essentially, that information will be sent from the vestibule along the vestibular branch of the vestibular cochlear nerve, right? So this is a cranial nerve. Okay, so vestibule, that's where you find that utricle and saccule involved in gathering information dealing with head position when your body's not moving, as well as linear acceleration or linear movements. So your semicircular canals, you can see there are 3 of them and they're at right angles to one another. So they're going to sense, their job is, if you see these little enlargements near the base of the semicircular canals connected to the vestibule, this is called the ampulla, and each semicircular canal has an ampulla. Inside of that, you would find your crista ampularis, which is going to be the organ of rotational or angular movements. So that crista ampularis, when that fluid moves in response to your head rotating, it's going to cause the deflection of that crista ampularis, and that information is also going to be sent along the vestibular branch of the vestibular cochlear nerve to the brain, okay? So put this back in, and you can see how it's all connected. So get a little closer. So tympanic membrane, Malleus is first, Malleus, incus, stapes, cochlea, you want to think the organ of hearing. Okay, so these hair receptors are going to be dealing with sending information, auditory information, along the cochlear branch. The vestibule and the semicircular canals, you want to think about organs of equilibrium and balance. So all this information is going to be sent along the vestibular branch of the vestibular cochlear nerve. Here, this structure right here that's coming off the back, right? So here's our tympanic membrane. This is the auditory canal, or Eustachian tube, or you can call it the pharyngotympanic tube. I like pharyngotympanic tube because it gives you a descriptor of what it's located between. Down here would be your pharynx, or the back of your throat, right? So pharyngopharynx, tympanic cavity, your tympanic membrane. So it's the tube that connects the back of your throat, your pharynx, to this tympanic cavity. And what that helps, it helps equalize pressure. So something I didn't mention first of all is that your ear can be separated into 3 compartments: outer, middle, and inner, right? So the outer ear would be your auricle, your lobule, your external acoustic meatus. Your middle ear is going to be where you find your tympanic membrane and your 3 ossicles. This middle ear cavity is filled with air, okay? Your inner ear is your all of this stuff. So your cochlea, your vestibule, your semicircular canals, and then the vestibular cochlear nerve that comes off of the back, okay? So this middle ear cavity where you find the tympanic membrane and the ossicles, that's filled with air. And if the pressure of air inside of this cavity is different from the pressure of air outside, that can affect your hearing. So if you've ever been on a plane before and you know your ears want to pop, you chew gum or you hold your nose and you blow, well, essentially what you're doing is you're opening the flap that's down here that seals off the pharyngotympanic tube in your throat. When you open that, it helps equalize the pressure between the outside and the inside, your middle ear cavity, right? Because differences in pressures can affect your hearing, okay? All right, so that's the ear.